Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Condon. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I am the CEO of a company called Axon Consulting. We do IT consulting engagements like project-based. We'll build software, mobile apps, websites, SEO, SEM. So if any of you need that, please come find me later, because I'd really like to make back some of the sponsor money. No, I'm seriously not joking. But yeah, today though, I'm actually not talking to you sort of in that capacity. So with the Digital Commerce Board, we focused on research. This year we have a bunch of initiatives put together designed around producing research on the digital commerce market in the Philippines. And this is something we're just sort of starting to do, but we have a paper that'll be coming out very shortly in conjunction with effective measure. Is Maria here? Hey, everyone. Maria Java, everybody. Round of applause. And country manager for effective measure. And in today's report, we'll be presenting some of my favorite findings from that, and we're going to do a more robust paper that will come out very shortly. And then also, we're working on a larger white paper on digital commerce in the Philippines. So today, I wanted to just sort of talk through, what I've been able to find to date using publicly available international databases, some financial type data, and where I'm sort of falling short. And I'm hoping to learn more from the audience, basically having this opportunity to be in front of 180 people focused on this industry, where I can supplement with local data or how we can achieve this better. So these views so far are just my own ideas. They are not the views of the board in any way. In fact, I haven't started talking yet, and I think Fred already disagrees with me. But we'll just get going from here. Hold on. All right. So we are focused on what is the state of digital commerce in the Philippines. Why are we still behind? So you probably noticed in this conference, we've all quoted the same couple facts on our rate of growth in the last year. And I think the main reason we keep quoting the same information is because it's all we have. So all we have is sort of this anecdotal data. What I'm hoping to do is that we can produce something more comprehensive so we can do projections going forward and get more granular with our understanding. So just to look at that, I wanted to look at the factors of someone buying online and sort of try and figure out where there might be problems, why we still lag way behind. So if someone's buying online, right, you have to have buyers in the first place. So do we have enough people? So that sounds silly in the most densely populated city in the world. We're basically the size of New Mexico. We've got a third of the population of the US on it. But I wanted to look a little bit at population because if we're going to look at the future at all, we have to be able to figure out where the population is headed. Can we buy online? So this is, do we have access to the devices, meaning the internet, et cetera? And do we have ways to pay for that for those particular things that we would want to buy that we have access to? And finally, do we have money? Do we have the financial means to actually buy the goods or services online that we would like to buy? And then in the future, we want to be able to do more in terms of projecting the people and the money in this market. So why does the Philippines continue to lag behind? The figure we keep quoting, which is BPI estimates that 45 to 50 billion, this includes travel, was spent in the Philippines last year, up 40% from last year, which is a great growth rate, but it's still a very small absolute number and way behind our international peers. This came from BPI, from their head of credit cards, Richmond Escalar, actually. That's sort of the one big fact we have for this year in terms of how we grew. And so we want to have more information on that and more specific information about how this market is moving forward. And also the Digital Commerce Board, I'm hoping that we can all work together to share private information from our companies so that we have sort of proprietary stuff that no one else has access to. So this is the results of the effective measure survey. This is our sampling of the results. These are some of my favorite findings from this new paper that's going to be coming out that we did in collaboration with Maria. And so I'm using this to talk about whether Filipinos are willing to buy online. So in terms of the factors that influence things, you have to look at the buyers. You have to look about, are they willing to buy? Do they have the access to buy? And do they have the financial means to buy? We also should probably look at the sellers from those same perspectives. But who here in this room could possibly sell more of the products that they have online and would be willing to right now? Anyone? You guys who are digital sellers? You guys sell online? You all have enough business. None of you want any more revenue. Okay. My point is I think we have a surplus of sellers. So I don't think we need to consider that too closely. But can everyone see what's written on this, or do I need to read it out loud? The font's a little light. So the findings are, oh God, no, it's tiny. 97.39% of respondents reside in the Philippines. The average age of the respondent was 31, which is young but not super, super young. Average income per capita of the sample size was 23,726 PHP, which I will later talk about as being probably slightly affluent for this market. If you look at the residences in this pie chart, it's well distributed around the country. They're not just all based in Metro Manila. So we're really getting a decent sample of the whole size. The total sample size is about 300-ish, give or take. Let's see, the key findings. Now these are some great numbers. Check this out. About 43% had made a purchase after seeing the product or service online, either paying it online or in person. Over 95% were in the satisfied range when describing buying or researching products and services online. Over 95%, that's a great number. Almost 95% indicated they would be somewhere between somewhat likely and very likely to recommend buying or researching products/services online. More than 84% perceive online buying or viewing products and services online prior to making an online purchase as safe or very safe. So 95%, almost 95%, 86%. My point with this, these numbers are all very good, right? It seems to indicate that with this, seemingly random sample from throughout the country, people are now willing to buy online, which is weird because ever since I've come here, people always talk about, the bias against buying online is why people don't buy, right? I would occasionally talk to someone who's like 23, and they'd tell me that they're scared to buy online. And that's crazy to me coming from the US, where no one's scared to buy online. We buy all the time. My grandmother used to buy online, whatever. So moving on. It seems like Filipinos are no longer scared to buy online, which is great news. Can they access the internet? So I just pulled a couple random facts here because, we all have the same numbers again. It's all coming from the same data providers. But 33.6 million internet users as of June 2012, up from 2 million in 2000, which is a great growth rate. That's a third of the population in the Philippines right now. Philippines has the largest number of Facebook users per capita in the world, roughly 1 in every 3 citizens. Probably some of that, I'm guessing, is due to the fact that every business here seems to, instead of buying a website, go ahead and use a Facebook page as a business profile. But, it still indicates a high degree of people online using Facebook. The Philippines is the fastest growing market for smartphones in Asia, up over 400% from Q1 11 to Q1 12. Though we have the lowest penetration rate in Southeast Asia because our population is so big, behind Singapore and Malaysia, which are both over 90%. We're now estimated to be tied 15th globally for smartphones. That's pretty crazy when you consider the relative wealth of this country to other countries. And it's not surprising, actually, when you think about things like the cloud phone. Have you guys seen the cloud phone? Are the cloud phone people here? No? Oh, it's a 6-ish K Android with a back panel, or with a back camera. And if you're willing to sacrifice the back camera, if you just want the front camera for hanging out, you can get them for 3K now. So, the Philippines has the over 92 million mobile users in the world, over 92 million mobile users in the country. If you figure that they will all convert to smartphones in the very near future, given how low those price points are getting, I mean, even, low wage-paying jobs can often afford 1K or so. Very soon, everyone will have access to the internet and be able to buy online. So the point with this is Filipinos are no longer scared to buy online, apparently. They seem to feel pretty good about it. And Filipinos apparently have access to buy online if they're interested. This isn't even mentioning the proliferation of internet cafes. I couldn't get a good number on how many there are. But Netopia is the biggest, supposedly. They got 71. And there's got to be so many mom and pops. You got to figure it's in the hundreds somewhere. So very accessible to get online. So can we purchase online? So who thought Dick Chang's presentation yesterday was awesome? I thought that was so good. And the reason I loved it partly was because he talked a lot about the percentage of revenue that was coming through different channels online. And this was something that really interested me in my old job. And I haven't seen revenue breakdowns in 8-ish months, so I have no idea what's going on there. But I'd heard anecdotally from other members of the board that OTC was now this really big thing, and that they were getting double-digit percentages, very high in their OTC, which sounded crazy to me. But now we see back, Metro Deal information that also seems to back that up, plus the general information from Dragon Pay in general. So I thought that was such valuable, interesting data. And this shows a very, very similar story. So if you look, this shows the different payment channels, and it breaks out both the bank and the non-bank. Thank you for doing that, Maria. And you can see that a very high percentage of the money that's being collected online now comes from these cash transactions, basically. But it still allows them to purchase online in some way, shape, or form. And I think I haven't seen the numbers over time. I would love to see a growth rate. But based on my limited experience with this, I think it would be dramatic. So I think that would be something really interesting to look at. But this, to me, is a really great graph. And Dick's presentation yesterday was excellent. So So now let's just talk really quickly through some macroeconomic stuff. Now this stuff falls a bit flat, okay? I'm using like IMF and World Bank data and World Wealth Report, Capgemini, Ernst & Young, all the stuff that, a Wall Street analyst would use to do like country market sizing type stuff. Thing is, it really falls apart in the Philippines on a lot of stuff. So I have to get smarter in terms of what the local information is, local agencies, particularly the ones that make it digitally available, to sort of fill in the gaps. But here's where I'm at, and feel free to punch holes in it. But if you look, population growth has been dramatic, not surprising in the Philippines. What did surprise me, though, is population growth rate has fallen to almost 1%. So for those of you who did economics in college, you probably remember this guy, Thomas Malthus, would talk about how humans were going to overrun the planet. This was in the 18th century. We were going to, grow exponentially like a virus, eat all the food, and we'd all be dead. And he was proven wrong over time. And what we learned, though, is that economically developed countries, their population growth rates tend to slow to 1%. Now, people think of the Philippines as a developing economy. So it's sort of weird to me to see this trend of, showing signs of the Philippines being now a developed nation. And the fact that the population is now only growing at about 1-ish% means that our market size is kind of fixed. And so it's sort of about the wealth that exists within that population and people's disposable income, more specifically, that we now need to consider. So, the Philippines is basically slowing their population growth to almost a negligible percent at this point. Next one. So this is the absolute PH aggregate incomes. This is looking at GDP per capita, sorry, just aggregate GDP, which is also equal to all the income in the country. And you can see that it went up by about 11-fold in this period. I think we started in 1980. I arbitrarily picked sort of, when TCP/IP got defined as the start of the internet to look at. And so it's up about 11-fold in that time, the aggregate income of the country. But if you look at it in terms of per person and also purchasing power parity, meaning looking at the basket of goods it would buy in different countries, so we can actually compare like for like, you can see that the Philippines is still very low on the world map there of the 226 countries listed. And then you can see we're even low in Asia still. We're still bottom half there, which is not great. And also on the map, you can see that we're still in the bottom of the heap. We're in the second to the worst bucket there. Now, here I make a leap that economists would have a problem with. But GDP per capita is a good indicator of standard of living. It is not a good indicator of the average individual's income. So I'm making the jump here because I don't have better data, just to show something. I do hope to get, Bureau of Labor Statistics data or something like that that would give me better income statistics here. But I don't know, if you guys have information on that or know where I can find it, please let me know because it hasn't been easy. Yep.
Didn't the World Bank just, after last quarter, after Q4, and how the Philippines was fast, all GDP growth, because fast GDP growth, 28%, I believe?
Yeah, I've got a good number on that in a second.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to say by 2050, we're going to be number 14 economy in the world, supposedly.
There's another, for absolute size, yeah, and there's another really cool number from this year's World Wealth Report that's very similar to that. But this would imply, if I make this jump that economists would have trouble with, income of approximately 7,687 PHP per month, which we all would agree I think is a fairly low salary for this market, especially those of us who live in Manila and are used to slightly higher salaries. So one sort of silly question I asked is, are Filipinos saving it? And I think those of us who live in this market know that's probably not the case, because I think if we all think for just 1 second, we can think of one person we know who owns an iPad who spent over a month's salary on it, right? I can think of a couple, yeah. And so, clearly savings is not a priority in this market for most Filipinos. It's more about consumption culture. And you can see the savings rate has fallen to just under 1%. And I stuck in some major world powers underneath just for purpose of comparison. And you can see that sometimes it's up to 15%. The US is about 5%, et cetera. So, this sort of correlates with that. But this is from a Credit Suisse wealth report. And you can see that the Philippines is near the bottom of the barrel in terms of wealth per individual as well, implying that we're not saving it. We didn't have it to begin with. It's not like the new fall in the savings rate is indication of us spending wealth. We're just, still low. We're still in our nascent stages with that. But wealth in general is probably not a good thing for us to be looking at in terms of how much people can spend on things. Just like if you get a mortgage, the bank kind of ignores entirely your assets, and they look more or less at your income in terms of what you can pay back in the mortgage. Sort of the same idea. We would look at the income relative to the average Filipino, meaning what they can actually spend on things after you subtract the subsistence level or whatever, the discretionary income you look at. you don't look at their wealth because they would have to be selling assets for, until they ran out to keep buying. Now, this is an incredibly encouraging graph. This is from the World Wealth Report, and that's pretty much the most respected report that comes out every year on wealth in the world. It's done by Capgemini and Merrill Lynch together. And check out just this row in the back. I don't know if you guys can see this, but you can see that it sort of looks like a city, right? And this row in the back here, this is developing Asia. And you see it starts from the very bottom of the barrel in the present, coming up to 2050. Yeah, this is the period from 1950 to 2050. Excuse me, going to 2050. So the midpoint is today. And if you look at the end, developing Asia is now predicted to be the largest area for real GDP in the world. That's incredibly promising. And more specifically, I apologize if we jump back. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Oh, good. And then another number out of that same report, if you look, the Philippines is now projected to be the sixth highest growth rate in GDP in the world consistently from 2010 to 2050. So going forward over the next 40 years. And so I took that, albeit wonky, I don't have a good term for it, the not great salary number, and I just grossed it up by real GDP over that time period, assuming a reasonable inflation rate, assuming their predictions for real GDP are real, and assuming the savings rate stays about the same. And you can see that there'll be massive income growth within the market. So, I guess my basic conclusion is that so far at least, it looks like Filipinos are no longer scared to buy. Filipinos now have access to buy, and very soon will have very wide access to buy. It's more about the means. And so that's a very good story in a lot of ways. I mean, we had 40% growth this year, right? I mean, that's a spectacular, spectacular number. But high growth rates are easy when things are small, and then they tend to slow as things get big. It's hard to scale. And so it seems like we may have gotten a lot of good gains from Filipinos who were scared to buy online. Now the trend is catching on. They're willing to buy. Or maybe now they're just getting access. They wanted to buy, but they couldn't before. But I think now the growth rates are going to continue to go up. I mean, the Philippines is a great economy over the next 30, 40 years, clearly. But I think our growth rates will probably be more in line with economic growth rates over that time period. So again, just my ideas. Feel free to punch holes. Tell me reports I got to look at. Again, this was all free, publicly available data. That was the best I could get my hands on, all international. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I hope people are still here.
Can you give me?
Oh, thank you.
Hoping that the people from the government are still here. I think in many countries, access to information or widespread access to information is really what's helped lead to the growing middle class. And I think you've indicated some of those things there as well. And so, going towards 2050, I think that the sooner we have faster access to information, which is, I think, yesterday, Senator, he mentioned that he's an advocate of widespread broadband or something like that, broadband everywhere. The sooner we get that, if anybody's still here that's actually listening right now about this, please do it, because then that'll happen faster, I think, right?
Yeah.
And you see that in countries around the world. Just wanted to say.
That's a good point. Just because you have internet access doesn't mean you have a fast enough connection to actually use an e-commerce site. Some e-commerce sites require 1 or 2 megabits per second. So that's a good point.
Okay, we open the floor for questions. Dave, if you can sit down, be comfortable. There might be a lot of questions. Bring your microphone, please. There are no text questions for now, but anybody from the floor? Sure, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ralph from Metro Deal. So I wanted to know from you, Dave, because you looked at all the data, and Metro Deal, our sales in 2012 were 18 million USD, 750 million pesos, and it's interesting.
Jerry's so happy now you're talking revenue.
Right. So and I'm more interested, to hear from you, because you looked at all the data. This was obviously 2012 for Metro Deal, and Jack said yesterday the market is the non-travel market is 5 billion, so 5 billion pesos here in the Philippines in 2012. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think will be the growth in 2013? Because you have studied the matter.
I mean,
is there any number that you can provide us?
I'm sorry. I mean, that's one of the things that I hope to be able to achieve in the near future. I hoped for today actually to find good enough data, but honestly, I've been struggling with getting the information. If anyone knows of anything good in terms of by country e-commerce sales data, like year on year for like benchmarking against other markets, that would be great. I mean, I could do like a simple growth rate based on the last couple of years, based on BPI's number or whatever. But I don't think that necessarily tells the right story. And again, as I said, I think we may have gotten some of the easy wins, and I think we may now be more falling in line with economic growth rates, which are still very, very good, but less dramatic possibly than what we saw this year. Yeah.
Okay, still no text-in questions. Are we confused or perhaps overwhelmed by the stats? Jack, do you have anything else to add as well? Okay.
Actually, this is the first time that we're getting a preview of what we plan to be a white paper, a joint initiative between DCOM and an effective measure. So I think what Dave presented is just a snapshot of the kinds of data. So we really would welcome more questions about the kinds of details that the audience and DCOM members will expect for the upcoming white paper. And this, by the way, just to get a plug-in for membership, is going to be part of our agenda for the quarterly membership meetings that we will have, where we will have one or two featured speakers, such as Dave's talk this morning. So I don't have any really... Oh, Isaac. Thank you, Isaac.
Hey, Dave, thanks. Great presentation. I'm Isaac from Pollenizer, doing some investments here, or hope to. So we look at Southeast Asia at more generally, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. All of these are fast-growing markets, fast-rising internet populations, et cetera. So did you get any sense, looking at the Philippines data, how things compare between Philippines, Indonesia? Where does Philippines sit in the growth of e-commerce compared to these other fast-moving economies?
As I was just saying a second ago, I still can't find any good data on e-commerce sales by market. I did a not horrible. I need to do more looking into it, but I spent at least several hours trying to scour for anything that seemed indicative. And I mean, at this point, I would just compare, GDP per capita or GDP. It's, I can't give you anything better at the moment. I know Forrester or Gartner or someone must be doing it. Oh, Maria's got an answer for us.
All right. Hi, my name's Maria Hava. I'm from Effective Measure. We're very glad, actually, that there's a lot more curiosity about that. We are actually coming up with a Southeast Asian study for e-commerce, which will be very useful for us. But for this community in the Philippines, we will, as Jack said, we'll be coming up with a more in-depth study. Just as a teaser and in addition to what Dave has already presented, for example, credit card penetration, everybody knows that. Turns out there's a difference between the usage of credit cards between males online and females online. It seems 49% of men who have purchased online have used a credit card followed by a debit card. But females, especially when it gets to maybe a more broad C sort of market, are using over-the-counter. 7-Eleven, pawn shops, Western Union, MoneyGram. They're very used to it. They're comfortable with it. And there's a lot of opportunity. In larger broad C, even D markets, and yes, there is an e-commerce D market, even the gaming prepaid cards are being used to buy music and events tickets. And yes, we don't just download torrent music, we actually buy them online already, even in D markets, which is a good thing. So there's a lot of detail that we can expect, and as Jack said, we'll be kind of presenting this in detail as an e-commerce index in the next General Assembly for DCOM. And if you can tell us a little bit more about what you need to know, either a specific age demographic, or do you want us to maybe focus on, let's say, just grocery buyers, or people who consider themselves household decision makers for finance and property, we can actually zero in on that, okay? But there is a gap now as to, the size of the e-commerce market in the Philippines. we can help as a third-party, neutral, publisher, neutral, audit facility, and that's kind of what e-commerce does. What e-commerce, Effective Measure does for e-commerce in the Philippines. What we'd like to do is if we all cooperate and basically get ourselves if we cooperate on measuring ourselves on that same standard, on the same measurement currency, then we get that. Give me 3 months, and we'll get that number for you. Okay?
Yeah, but sorry, do you have an answer to where Philippines sits? In the,
We could actually, yes. If you will download the link and
stats.
register, and you'll get the
So
study.
where would you? No, I don't. Maybe we'll buy your report, but give us a teaser. Where do you, if you're studying this data across Southeast Asia, where do you think the development of this ecosystem sits compared to the other markets that have similar characteristics, GDP per capita and internet penetration?
Okay, out of just basic spending power, Singapore and Malaysia is still kind of where
I'm not talking
most
about
of
Singapore and Malaysia. I'm
Right.
talking about Indonesia, Vietnam,
Yes,
Thailand,
absolutely.
and
For
Philippines, the big
emerging
markets.
Asia,
Yeah.
Indonesia is still, out of sheer volume, Indonesia is still kind of leading that. But when it comes to skill set, it seems the region is looking towards us. But for large, untapped opportunity, Vietnam is actually kind of where the eyes are. All right, so there are different growth areas, expertise and systems, for example, and management skill sets. They're actually looking towards us. So there are a lot of ways, and actually it really depends on perspective. But I guess this is part of the challenge as well. And as Dave said, there's no real one study unless all of us here basically put all of that together and agree on what the standard will be.
Hi, Cherry Miguel, again, CEO of Chiquiba Marketing. It's a holding company. I just have a question regarding your pie chart that you have there. Okay. Where did you base it from?
So that was from the same effective measure study that Maria and I mentioned earlier, which will later be produced in a white paper that will be released to the public with more information. Hold on, let me see if I can bring it back. Basically, it was a answer to a survey question that was submitted to about 300 people, and it was part of a broader study that we did, which was also where we got that information about willingness. We still plugged in? Nope. Sorry. That explains it. No, don't worry about it. It's fine. You don't need to see it again, right? I can show it to you. We can.
Okay.
Yeah, offline.
Okay.
But yeah, it just basically shows their propensity to use different payment channels. And as Maria pointed out, there was a gender bias among that I didn't break into this particular pie chart, but we may go into in the white paper.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, there is a texting question. Let me read it out for you. Why is the Philippines still lagging behind in terms of e-commerce or buying in the world? What conditions are needed to drive growth in spending or purchases online here?
Okay. So my conclusion is it's purchasing power at the moment. I think we've gotten a lot of the gains we're going to get from access to the internet and from fears of buying online, willingness to buy online. And I think now it's going to become a game of waiting for the emerging middle class, the KPOs and the BPOs, all the money coming in, to produce, average incomes that have disposable income sufficient to buy online. Pat's example in Davao is a perfect example with the buffet, where, price points and purchasing power have to reach a certain point in order for us to be viable, because we have to take a margin, and we often have transaction fees based on how we collect our remittances.
Okay, yes. Any other texting questions? Any other questions from the audience? Are we good? Yes? Do we let Dave sit down? Aww.
Thank you all.
Okay, I think he wants to sit down. Dave, thank you very much for that.